hope you guys had a wonderful night. Did you all have fun last night at the reception? Was the food good? Good, good, good. And I hope that the day was good for you yesterday. We have another full day, but I know it's going to be a good day. So now I'm going to have Taffy Campaign come up, and she's going to start us off with the introductions for today's general session. She's the National Foster Care Specialist. I know a lot of you probably know her. If you haven't got to know her, please do, because she's a wonderful woman. And Taffy, take it away.
Thank you very much. All right, good morning, everybody. I think I was here, and I was maybe a month old a year ago when I came to the Children's Bureau, and I said this joke then, but it's so true. I'm going to say it again. I really am standing up, okay? So as Natalie said, I'm the National Foster Care Specialist at the Children's Bureau, and it's really an honor and a privilege for me to serve in that position as well as to be with all of you here. When Natalie asked me about introducing our first speaker this morning, I didn't even let her finish. I was so excited. I had the pleasure of meeting Nicole earlier this year, and she's just one of those people that just really sticks in your mind. You know, she has the passion and the drive and the energy that I used to have 20 years ago. But she's just a wonderful person, and I'm really excited that you'll get to hear her story, because it is really one of those where it was not rosy when she was in foster care for part of her life, but she has really turned that around and is a great advocate for other children and youth, as well as a sister to other children and youth that are in care. So I'm really excited to introduce her. And since I sometimes am told that I talk too much, I'm going to get back on track here and give you some introductory words on Nicole. Nicole Dobbins is the Executive Director for Voice for Adoption in Washington, D.C., and that's a national policy advocacy organization whose mission is to represent the interests of foster children awaiting adoption and the families who adopt them. Previously, she served as the Director of Events at Foster Club, the national network for young people in foster care. She has testified in front of the United States Congress and served as a spokesperson for the National Foster Care Month campaign. She was also recognized in 2008 as one of the 10 outstanding young leaders by the Kids Are Waiting campaign. She's an alumnus of the Oregon foster care system, and she leverages her firsthand experience and her passion to effectively advocate on behalf of young people that she considers her brothers and sisters in foster care. Growing up, she was in and out of foster care since the age of 2. And she was placed in foster care with her younger sister in several foster homes. And being with her younger sister, she really recognizes now what a blessing that actually really was. She was the first in her family to graduate from high school, and she proceeded to graduate with a bachelor's degree in exercise sports science from Oregon State University in 2006. She believes education was an intervention that saved her from making poor decisions as she was transitioning into adulthood alone. She believes that young people need families, especially as they transition into adults, and she has turned her experience into a passion and advocates for the needs of foster youth. So without delaying too much further, Nicole Dobbins.
Good morning. How are you? Good? Oh, I don't see enough smiles. Can everyone smile? Okay, that's better. You don't look like government employees anymore. Okay. Well, you know, you guys are serious. It makes me nervous up here, but I had no idea that she was going to share all that, so I kind of feel like I'm, don't have much left to share, but I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be here. I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to share with you some of my story, but also some of my experience in the work that I've done, working with other young people in the advocacy work that I've done, and kind of basically how I've gotten here, how I've developed permanency for myself, and hopefully a vision for developing permanency for older youth in foster care across the country. I'm going to start a little bit with my story and tell you you know, when I was first asked to be here, I didn't realize what I was speaking at. I kind of said yes because it's the Children's Bureau, and you don't really say no to that. It might even be might be against the law even. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. But I didn't know that I was going to be speaking in front of so many important people, people that I would consider, so influential, and some, people in the room can teach me so much. I'm like, what can I bring to these people that they haven't already heard? So I recognize all of the things that you've already heard, and I hope that you can maybe just hear one thing and take that back. I know you've heard a lot of youth perspective, and I'm just really excited to be able to share some of the stories, not just my own, this morning. So I'm from Portland, Oregon. There he is. Hi, Kevin. Just wanted to acknowledge him. I met him after foster care, and he's a great guy. So I'm from Portland, Oregon. I was in foster care 2 different times. I feel like I was kind of always involved with the foster care system. I entered at 2. And it was very traumatizing. And it's so funny that we've been talking about trauma and child well-being, but I can't think of a different word to describe the entry into foster care. I carry it with me today. It's hard to even mention that word as I'm standing before you, but I think it's a very descriptive word to describe the experience of being taken away from your family. We reunified with my mom, which sounds like a great thing. And remembering my mother, she was a great person, but she had issues with substance abuse. And I feel like those issues were never really resolved. And so other abuse happened, and I re-entered the foster care system at 14. But, a lot of traumatizing things in my childhood from home life were still happening. And so there was kind of a lack of the child welfare system in our family once we returned home. And I'm remembering that now, and that's kind of how it felt. Like we kind of were abandoned again, when we went back home. So after re-entering the foster care system, like Taffy mentioned, I did enter with my younger sister, which didn't mean much to me then. We didn't have a good relationship because some of the, situations where, abuse and neglect and things like that didn't happen to both of us. And so I carried a lot of grief for entering the foster care system, and because she didn't understand. And so for me, it felt like it was my fault. And so I carried that around a lot. And later in life, I understood how important it was to be placed with my siblings, and how thankful I was to the foster care system that they made sure that happened. So we were in a couple of placements, and I say APLA up here, and I'll talk more about my case goal of APLA, and when I understood what that meant. When I was 14, I didn't, but that was my case goal. And then I aged out of the foster care system. Very abruptly, I was in a placement with my sister again for 2 years. And then the day after graduating from high school, I was asked to leave. And it was very unexpected. I didn't have this closing case, court appearance. It was just very, very hard to deal with, and a very abrupt transition. So you can imagine how I left the foster care system, not very thankful, again, feeling abandoned. But I had something on my side. I was already accepted into college, and I was accepted into Oregon State. And so this family took me in that knew, my foster mother knew the situation, and she took me in for the 3 months that I would be, quote unquote, homeless if I didn't have somewhere to live. Being in college alone without a family is a constant reminder of the lack of family that I didn't have. You've heard these stories, so I won't go too much in depth. But the care packages, the stories of families, the visitation that mom's weekend and dad's weekend, how exciting that was for so many people, but how depressing it was for me, and how lonely I felt. And I share this, but I'm not sharing just my story. It's my experience, but this is the story of so many young people who age out without a family. So how did I get to be right here? I had the opportunity. I was seeking out college funding because I was trying to be resourceful. And I didn't have much luck with the independent living services or program when I was in care. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I did reach out to the local ILP program and coordinator in the area I went to school, which was not the area I grew up. She connected me to a few things and tried to get me scholarships, which was great. One of the things that she did was tell me about this amazing opportunity to intern with an organization called Foster Club. Foster Club is a national network for youth in foster care. It is a place where I developed a purpose, a sense of all of my experience made, have an impact, and I can give back to the system that I came from. It gave me a sense of family. I met other people. These are my people over here. There are other former foster youth that could be up here articulating their experience as well. So make sure you reach out to them because, again, they have stories to share too. But this opportunity changed my life. It made me see the foster care system in a different way. It made me bring my experience and understand that it had some expertise to it. So I had the opportunity to, find my own family, but I'll explain that in a minute. But I had the opportunity to learn about permanency and develop permanency in my own life. And this was an afterfact or an afterthought of foster care. I learned about permanency through a training that Foster Club delivers. It's called Getting Solid. It teaches young people very concretely what permanency means. And I think we can do a better job by young people about teaching them how to build healthy relationships and what those look like. And again, I'll talk more about that experience. But because I was able, I've never heard the word permanency or kind of really knew what that meant when I was in foster care. But once I learned what it was, I was able to develop it in my own life. So very personal experience. In college, I used to cry myself to sleep all the time. It was my safe place. I was very lonely, and I did not have a family, and that's what I would cry about. I learned about permanence, and I developed relationships with my families, my friends' families, and their parents. And it wasn't until I understood the importance of connections that I was able to do that. And looking back, once I was able to do that, I didn't feel lonely. I didn't cry myself to sleep. And so how good that felt, how much I had overcome just being able to understand what permanency meant. And I hope that that's something we move toward teaching young people about as we think about trauma and well-being and the thought of permanency for all young people. I got involved with legislation called Fostering Connections, which I don't doubt that any of you have never heard of. So I had the opportunity to, with Foster Club, bring youth voice to Capitol Hill. It made a big difference, and staff who worked on the bill will tell you it's what drove the bill. It was voted by unanimous consent, and they will tell you that the youth stories made a big difference. Again, people in this room have testified in front of Senate, in front of the House, about all kinds of things, sibling connections, transitioning, and all of these things were kind of incorporated. Youth voice and youth advocacy plays such a big role, and I'll talk more about that later. And then there's Voice for Adoption. That's where I am now. I won't tell you too much about what we are because Taffy explained it, but I think Voice for Adoption's board gets credit for taking a chance on a young person who probably didn't have the credentials in full, especially with a degree in exercise sports science. Love my degree, but it doesn't translate as much to what I'm doing, but my experience and recognizing what I, bring to the table as a young person and kind of, with mentorship and help along the way, I've been able to build my knowledge base of the practical side of child welfare coupled with my experience. And I just thank Voice for Adoption for doing that. And I thank the other organizations, and including this conference, for including Youth Voice, even though I'm an older Youth Voice, in the work that you do. So I'm going to move towards my points, and I'm not going rogue, organizers. I shared my story. I'm going to keep incorporating it. But I think it's important to have a message as well. And, you know, I have some things that I've learned along the way about the importance of youth voice and how it can play a huge role in defining permanency for each young person that learns about advocating for themselves. So rejoice in your success. I think this is so important, and as a field, we don't celebrate our successes nearly enough. You have to raise the visibility to your celebrations and your successes, and you have to pat each other on the back. I have a story, and don't discredit the incredible. I think that came up when I was speaking with a director of an organization in the area that works with teens, and specifically teens that are available for adoption. She sent out a newsletter, and this organization had some really tough financial, you know, as a lot of organizations have been having, but they've been able to slowly rebuild, and they've had some great successes over the last year. And to name a few, they had 5 recent mentorship matches. They have these match parties and different things. They had 5 finalized adoptions, and they had 4 new adoption connections. And I emailed her after receiving that newsletter, and I said, congratulations on your success, because I think we need to hear that more often. And she said, it's not success yet, but we're getting there. And I said, this is incredible work. You are not giving credit to the incredible. And I think we need to do a better job of that. So I'll leave it at that. Share more success stories. This goes along with that. I think for young people, the more good stories we hear about permanent connections, the easier it is for us to believe that it's possible, for us to get over some of the fears that we have about developing permanency in our own lives, and to feel like you know, we're not alone in this, that there are other young people. I think as I was growing up, I didn't know any other foster kid until I was a senior in high school. And I had met this other kid, but we kind of stayed apart because we didn't want anyone to know we were foster kids. But I think for the more success stories we share and that we are able to hear about, the easier it is for us to have hope that either we will be reunited with our family, we will find a kinship connection, we will be adopted, and it helps us to kind of own some of our own insecurities about permanency. And then I also believe that there's this huge disconnect with public perception, well, in a lot of the places where labels come from, and probably the biggest area of concern for young people that are still in care. As an intern and as a director at Foster Club, we actually went around to states and we trained young people, and so we got to hear a lot about what they were concerned about. And it was often that the media thought they were bad kids, that you know, they had done something to enter foster care system. So I think we can do a better job of raising the visibility of our stories in the public. And then also on the other side of that, I've heard a lot of criticisms from the public that don't have a connection with child welfare that says they don't really know what to do. They hear our message, they know kids are waiting, but collectively, where do they go to volunteer if they can't be a parent? You know, so I think we just have to continue to raise the visibility of what they can do if they can't parent, and let them know about the good stories that are happening. Okay, this is a big one for me. Youth who turn down permanency. I think that you all know that youth disregard and we disrupt placements, we reject permanency for all sorts of reasons. I won't go into those reasons because I'm pretty sure all of you know why that happens. Unfortunately, I think the foster parents don't understand that enough, and so we could do a better job of explaining that to them. That's my perspective. But I think we as people, or you as people who work with caseworkers that serve kids, I think we accept the reason, respect the reasons why that happens and why kids, you know, reject permanency, but we don't accept it. But too often we do accept it because there are too many kids aging out of foster care. We have to meet young people where they are and peel away the onions, because we know why they come to placements and they they have the trauma that we heard about. We know of all the factors that play into this. But we have to gain the trust of them, and we have to talk to them about permanency, and I'll talk more about that. But we can't simply just accept that they don't want a family. I think no youth really doesn't want a family. I think there is a point of independence for all youth, all teens, not just foster youth, you when you were teens, your own kids. And why is it okay that we accept from a young person in foster care at the age of 14, at the age of 16, at the age of 17, that they can choose to be independent or just choose to live willy-nilly? We wouldn't expect that of any other kid that had a family, that lived in a family, and you probably wouldn't expect that of your own kids. So why do we simply, in policy, accept that young people can turn away a family? Well, I'm glad that you all agree. There's this whole thing of APLA, another permanent planned living arrangement, and what that means. Kids don't even understand what that means. And actually, let me tell you, the first time I learned that my goal was APLA, I was going around in the state of Oregon, and I was training young people caseworkers about permanency. And my role was to bring that youth voice to the table. And they were actually training on this new rule that was proposed in Oregon under APLA. I can't tell you what that was because I don't even remember. But I remember learning about the hierarchy of placing children, ASFA, and what that meant, of how we need to first reunify kids, connect them with their kin, then guardianship, and then APLA. And I remember asking the administrator, which I really enjoy. He's a great person, too. He's one of my rock stars. He always cheers me on. We were riding in a car. We were riding to the coast in Oregon, and I said, well, wait, where's foster care in this hierarchy? I don't understand where that is on the totem pole. That's what I called it. I said, I never was asked about adoption or all these other things. He said, well, foster care is under APLA. And I said, oh, gosh, I went straight to the bottom of the totem pole? I'm like, how does that work? And I don't remember ever being asked about being adopted, and maybe that's because they thought I was going to be reunified. I think there are different reasons why that kind of plays in, but to me, it was a realization that I went directly into APLA, and I think that whatever the reasons are, too many youth go directly into APLA. Whether they have other goals, I think we can have APLA, but we have to be concurrent in planning, and that's a big practice term we use. It's something I've learned, but I think it's something that's really important. We can't accept that reunification is always going to work, that adoption will always work. We have to have several plans in place, and youth have to be a part of that conversation. You have to help us overcome the fears of permanency and what that means, and I'll talk more about that. But we have to help us validate our story and overcome some of the grief that we carry and the anxiety that we carry. It's funny because I often looked up words to make sure I'm using them correctly, and it's kind of a backpedal because and I'm going to go on a tangent here, but in high school and different things and in school, even though I had a stable school life, my mind was always filled with questions, with worry, with anxiousness. I had a hard time paying attention in class because I was always worried what was going to happen next. And it's funny when I looked up the word validate that it said in the definition when they used the sentence, it said, in a healthy family, all children's feelings are validated. In a healthy family, all children's feelings are validated. And it's interesting that how coincidental that is when I looked it up, how important that is to children, that their feelings be validated. It helps us understand our stories and move on from it and recognize that permanency is an option in our life. And then again, I've talked a little bit about building trust. And I think there's an opportunity that we haven't taken advantage of. And we know, or I know now, that caseworkers, young people don't know this, that how busy your lives are, right? They don't get that. But I understand now. I see how busy I am and how busy that the caseworkers are. They don't have time to talk to youth all the time about permanency or have several meetings with them. But I think there's a missed opportunity with getting mentors to talk to them about permanency. I think they can do a very effective job about breaking down what that means, why permanent connections are important, and why if you don't want it now because you want independence, you might want it later. So I want to share this with you. This is Darren. He's now 17, but he was adopted at 9, and I think he does a really good job of articulating the feelings and why kids turn down permanency. Foster kids experience rejection in a way that most will never know. They go from house to house. Mentally, this is very hard for a kid. They finally find a place that feels like home. Their pain begins to slowly die, and they begin to trust the people who say they care about them, only to have their pain resurrected again when they graduate high school or on their 18th birthday. Unlike an adopted kid, they have no one to turn to, no place to go home for the holidays, no one to guide them through their college experience, no one to help them through their mistakes, no one to give them unconditional love. So it's back to anger and survival mode. And that's all of what Commissioner Samuels spoke about yesterday when he talked about well-being and overcoming some of the things that kids in foster care have experienced as a result of their bio-family relationships, and additionally, the result of what they've experienced in the foster care system. He talked about how kids internalize things, and so I beg of you not to overlook the kids that seem like they're doing okay, because they're one step from not doing okay. They will never lead on to it. I was one of those people, so I'm telling you personally, they will never act like they're not okay. They will disguise it in every way, but they are one incident, one situation from totally losing it all the time. They just do a good job of masking it. So it's unfortunate that caseworkers think a kid who's accepted to college is going to be okay. But I think that's an experience that we need to understand and give life to. Even the kids that seem okay aren't okay emotionally. So I'm really excited about this transition to looking at well-being and targeting that. Youth-driven permanency or peer permanency learning. I get really excited to talk about this because I think this is an opportunity that we need to build on. Youth can be really effective in teaching other youth about what permanency means, about why leaving the system and transitioning from foster care without a family is detrimental, and how to utilize and access the services and the opportunity to find a family while you're still in foster care. Youth can, give this message to another youth in a way that people who have never experienced foster care can't. I think meaningful youth permanency training is where I hope that we will move as a country that deals with child welfare, and we look at independent living programs to focus on not just the hard skills, but the relationship building. And again, the commissioner mentioned, this yesterday, that there's not any results that say that independent living programs are really effective, but we're spending a lot of money there. Instead of eliminating that, because if you let Congress know that, it will be eliminated. So instead of eliminating that, let's figure out how to leverage those programs so that they focus on the intent of what we hope. And I think connecting young people to supportive adults will drive all of the other things, how to manage a checkbook, and it will make your lives easier. I would say, form relationships with independent living program coordinators, bring people in to train them about child trauma and well-being and how to build up young people to overcome the things they've, had to deal with, and learn how to build healthy relationships. We've not been modeled healthy relationships a lot, so we can't effectively build those unless it's sort of taught to us. Again, I said this already, let other youth drive home the concept of permanency. I already mentioned foster clubs getting solid training. Effective youth engagement in driving home the idea of permanency is really helpful, and while it's not measured, a lot of the interns at Foster Club have developed permanency in their own life. It's not just my story. It's the other ones that have learned this. They've been able to develop it and get adopted in their older years. I looked at someone, but I don't want to put him on the spot there. But he was adopted at 23, and I'm sure he would give a lot of credit to learning about permanency after the fact. So I talked about this. And there's a camaraderie. I've already kind of touched on that as well among foster youth. So this is the one question I got all the time. Well, teens don't listen to me. And the caseworkers always say that. But don't be fooled, because they do listen to you. How many times as adults do you say, oh my gosh, I turned in my mother? I mean, I've heard that. But it's because you're drawing on the experiences that you heard all the time, that they drilled into you all the time. And, you know, they're like sponges. We absorb it all. We're too cool to let you know we do, because we are, you know, in the driver's seat as teens, you know, but that's not unlike any other teen. So don't stop telling them, because what a shame if we miss the opportunity to tell them something important they needed to know, like learning about permanency and how to develop that in their own life. What a shame if we didn't tell them and we missed the opportunity. So what makes a difference? I'm going to kind of speed through these. These are some of my thoughts about what makes a difference. I wish I had a magic potion, because everyone always asks me, well, what made it work for you? And I can't name just one thing. There were a ton of things. Having the opportunity to experience Foster Club. I was a mess. I was a huge mess. She's laughing because she knows. That's my best friend, Lupe Tovar, who actually did the internship with me in 2005. And we used to do these panels, and we would be crying. But it was somewhat of a therapy for me. I don't know. It just helped me get over a lot of things. But opportunities made a big difference. Hope. Let me tell you a quick story about hope. I know my time is running out. In the 5th grade, my principal, elementary school principal, sat us all down and said, you can go to college, and I'll help you pay for it if you do 3 things. This is how I remember it. I was a 5th grader, so was that 10 years old probably? This is how I remember it, though. You do 3 things. You get good grades, C's are better. You don't do drugs, easy for me. I had that modeled at home. That wasn't going to be me. And then 3, you don't have babies. I always remembered those things all throughout high school. It gave me hope. It wasn't about getting the money. It was having something concrete to hang on to know that if I did those things, I could make it through the tough situations I was going through at home. A lot of people ask, so I'll say quickly, I got that scholarship. She followed through on her word. And I had the opportunity to tell her that just over the summer. And it's a really exciting story I don't have the time for, but hope. That's my message. We have to give young people hope, whatever it is. Find something. And we know the difference when it's real. Youth involvement, I talked about that, but family. Having family and carrying adults at the table when we're talking to young people about permanency is so important. These family youth decision makings, these youth, I haven't been involved in one, and I don't train on it often, so I don't even know the terminology, but you know what I'm talking about. And so it's important to ask the young people who should be at the table. I'm not here to tell you all about that, so let's move on. The last thing I'll leave you with is understanding what permanency means. This, to me, is just so exciting because it captures just what it means. And this is an 11-year-old. Adoption is a big deal, and I'm glad my dad, I changed the name, Jeff, opened his heart to us. Adoption is a kid taking a part in a family's life and being loved despite the scars and pain they have been through. To me, it felt like someone reaching to me as if an angel had looked at me and spared my suffering. I could not have said it better. This is an 11-year-old who is in the process of being adopted. So I leave you with that. I hope that you have gained something from this presentation. I'm honored to have shared my story with you, and I welcome any questions probably after because we have to move on. So thank you.
All right. So on behalf of the Children's Bureau, we would like to thank Nicole very much, not just for sharing her story and her experience, but for me to also remind us that no matter how near or far you are from the direct field work, we all really have a responsibility and an opportunity to help children and youth have real, meaningful connections as they transition out of care. I think that was a wonderful message, and we really, really appreciate you sharing that with us.